Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists, episode 663. My name is Kyle.
And my name is James.
And we're here to talk movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. James, I'm going to welcome myself back to the podcast.
Okay.
Bring Zach back. Bring Zach back.
Yeah.
Bring Zach back. Bring Zach back.
It's been a weird December for the Cinereelists.
For sure. Yeah. Just lots of family flying in, flying
Lots
out.
of family. Yep. The holidays
exactly.
seem extra busy this year. So.
I literally have my sister from New Jersey in the other room while I record this.
Yeah.
She's watching TV on the 100-incher.
Yeah. Does the podcast know that you have this TV? I know.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
they know.
It has been discussed.
One listener has actually even seen it.
Which listener?
Zach and I shared an evening with listener Logan.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
He came over to the condo and we played some games. It was great. So
That sounds like fun.
Shout out Logan.
Awesome. Did you have a good Christmas?
Yeah,
All right.
it was great. I got no physical media, which is weird because last year I
Really?
got tons.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's because you can't buy it anywhere anymore.
You can buy it online. That's where everybody buys all their gifts anyway.
Well, through Amazon, but like Best Buy, they don't sell physical media. I think
Sure.
Target stopped carrying Blu-rays, DVDs. And did I hear that like Sony and Panasonic are no longer making Blu-ray, DVD, 4K players?
No, Sony and Panasonic are the only people.
Oh, they're
making
the only.
4K
Oh, thank
players.
goodness. Oh, I heard they stopped making them. Like, well, if they're not making them, who is?
No, LG announced that they're done.
That's okay. That's what it is.
So
All
the
right.
two major brands that said they're done are Samsung and LG. Then there was one called Oppo, I think, which is like the high-end Blu-ray 4K
Right.
players. They're out too.
Mhm.
So we only have two manufacturers left. But from what I understand, Sony hasn't shipped a new Blu-ray player in like 4 years.
Yeah, that's
So I don't
Should-
think they're developing new models. They're just selling the ones they have.
just what they have.
basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, should I just buy another 4K player now as a backup for when my current one dies? Because I have this fear that like my 4K player will die someday, and then no one makes them anymore. And like, even though I've got all this physical media, I can't
Sure.
watch it, or I have to like go on eBay and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a.
I mean, that's the risk, is that you'll have to go on eBay and spend money. But I think it'll be a while before you'll pay more than what retail cost was for
Right.
a used 4K Blu-ray player.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I wouldn't worry too much about it. I'm still finding them at thrifts. I have one sitting there doing nothing right here.
Oh,
off to
full
the
4K
side
player.
of me,
Wow,
a 4K player that I found in a thrift store. So
you're going to nice thrift stores if they got 4K players there.
they don't know what they have. They
That's
think it's
true,
just a
yeah.
Blu-ray player. So
Yeah.
Whoever turned it in, though, I don't know what they're doing. But anyway,
Yeah, exactly. That's just nice. Well, thanks to you, I did receive some physical media for Christmas this year.
Oh yeah, I don't even
Yeah.
remember what I got you. Do you remember off the top of your head?
Yeah, you got me 4 movies.
Uh-huh.
3 of them were Criterions. It was Hidden Fortress, Brazil, and one, oh man, I wish I could, one other. And then you got me a Blu-ray of something. I should remember this better.
I'm remembering the Blu-ray was Tree of Life.
Yes, Blu-ray's Tree of Life. Oh, Thin Red Line. That was the other Criterion
Red
you
Line.
got me.
Yeah.
Which I have not seen Thin Red Line since like the late 90s.
Sure.
So I'm really excited to watch that Criterion again.
It's a good one. I mean, it's a Terrence Malick, right?
It is Terrence
that's his
Malick,
first name?
yep.
Yeah, Terrence Malick movie that actually has some action in it, which is
Like
rare.
a plot. Yeah.
Right, for sure. But it's still very much a Terrence Malick movie, even though it's a
Oh.
war movie.
I remember it coming out on the heels of Saving Private Ryan.
Mhm.
And like it was getting that same sort of action marketing and like the huge cast, and
Sure.
you know, people saw it and they're like, who's this Adrian Brody as the lead? Like, that's not George Clooney. Because I remember they put like George Clooney like on like the cover and everything, even though he has 2 minutes and like the end of the movie. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah. They knew they're trying to get butts in the seats, and you
For
know,
sure.
this is before the internet, so they could trick people for a couple of weeks.
Definitely. For sure.
I also another cool movie thing that I
Mhm.
got. I'm gonna hold this up. People
Okay.
can see it.
Sure. Oh, it's the Lego Jaws set.
The
huh?
Lego Jaws.
Have you already put it
Yeah.
together? Is that why it's just the box?
I have assembled the orca. The boats. I've assembled the boat. The orca's assembled.
Okay.
I have not done the shark yet.
Nice.
And this is ridiculous. I hold on to the boxes because if I ever resell these things, they're worth more with the boxes.
Okay.
Like
So-
people will sell just the boxes and instructions for, $20 to $50, and that's just for the box and instructions.
Sure.
So
That's crazy. You're never gonna sell them though. Come on.
probably not. But like I have like the Indiana Jones one. I kept the box for that one.
Sure.
I've got the Jaws one.
You got this big old basement with nothing to put in it, so you
I have
might
a
as well
huge
put some
basement.
boxes.
Yes, so might as well throw boxes down there. And I don't know if I might mention this to you guys also. I did find like over the summer the Home Alone set used.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like some guy in my neighborhood was selling it for $100.
Sure.
And I was just like, "Are you sure about that price?" Like that's okay. So,
I didn't know you were such a Lego maniac.
as a kid,
Mhm.
love Legos. Like Zach and I, as kids, we play Legos all the time.
Mhm.
And then my son's really into Legos, and that kind of has re-sparked my love for them.
Sure.
And Lego knows that like people my generation have money now, and like they can sell us a Jaws set and a Home Alone set. Like they know what they're
Right.
doing.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, yeah, why not? Like they're fun to build. I got the bookshelves to display them on, and
Sure.
they're neat.
I heard on a podcast, I think it was, that like if you take the amount of increase that Legos have gone up over time, that Legos are a more valuable commodity than gold.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have like a Bricks and Minifigs here in Madison,
Mm-hmm.
and they will have used sets, for sale.
Mhm.
And some of the sets from when I was a kid are going for $300-$400.
Right.
And these are not big sets. This is like a little pirate dinghy and
was
an
like-
admiral guy.
It was $20 to $30 back in the day, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
now it's hundreds of dollars for those sets.
That's crazy.
Now, I'm glad I played those Legos and enjoyed them, and I don't have regrets of like, oh, wow, I can't believe I got rid of my Legos because, I was like 18. I'm like, well, I'm not going to play these anymore.
You weren't saving the box back then?
No, I wasn't saving the boxes back then. But, like toys are meant to be played with. But
In
every
theory.
time I see those things up there, a little pang is like, oh, if only I hadn't like given all my Legos to the neighbor kid.
Sure. What toy do you think is the least opened of all toys?
I would bet it's like Star Wars Phantom Menace toys.
Oh, I bet there were a lot. I'm
That-
going to guess Funko Pops.
Oh, so you mean unopened because of value or unopened because people just get them and put them on their
Just
shelf?
people buy them and they, like, on average, just never open them.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I think Funko Pops.
all right. I was thinking like collector wise, like who's buying something and thinking I'm not going to open this ever. And yeah,
So-
but you're right. Funko Pops for
Still,
sure.
Funko
People,
Pops. I think even people who like Funko Pops, for some reason, think if I open it, it won't be valuable.
I never understood a Funko Pop. Like they
I
all
don't know
kind of
either.
look the same.
It
It's
looks
just like,
stupid. In
Yeah.
my opinion.
yeah, I don't get them, but people collect them. And I guess if you want to stack them, you have to leave them in their boxes.
And if you like Funko Pops, you're dumb
Please stop listening.
and wrong. No, I'm kidding.
No.
It's fine if you like Funko Pops.
Yeah.
I personally prefer to like other stupid stuff and not Funko Pops. So
Oh, I have plenty of stupid things I like.
right, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of stupid stuff, we should probably get into this week's episode.
I'm excited for both these movies this week to talk
Me-
about them.
Me too. We always get like a real good end of the year episode because they save all the good movies for the end of the year. So,
Right. Yep.
we're gonna talk Nosferatu, which just came out on Christmas Day, and Anora, which is an often cited movie in the awards discussion this season. Before we jump into those, I need to remind you there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go check it out there and watch while you listen. You could also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists. You could also leave us an Apple Podcast review, 5 stars only. We'd appreciate that. Or send us a listener email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. REEL with an S on the end. Instructions to do any of those things are in the description of this episode. You ready to get into Nosferatu?
I'm very much ready to get into Nosferatu.
Let's do it right after this clip.
Come to me. Come to me. A guardian angel. A spirit of comfort. Spirit of any celestial sphere. Anything. Hear my call. Come to me.
That was Nosferatu, a 2024 American Gothic horror film written and directed by Robert Eggers. This movie stars Bill Skarsgård, Nicholas Hoult, Lily Rose Depp, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Emma Corrin, and Willem Dafoe, amongst others. And the official IMDb plot synopsis is a Gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and the terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror in its wake. Kyle, you're a big fan of Robert Eggers.
Yeah, I think he is one of the how can I try this? He's one of the working directors that I'm most excited about.
Sure, currently working directors. One of your favorites.
One of my favorites, and he has not missed for me yet,
right?
Including this movie. Yeah.
I'm in the same boat. Certainly I have preferences when it comes to his movies.
Oh yeah, I could rank his movies,
but all of them so far have been worthy of being watched at minimum. You know what I mean? Like they're all interesting in their kind of their own ways, and yet there's still a through line somehow.
Yeah.
At the same time, even though they're kind of different. Anyway, Nosferatu, this is a remake, I guess.
This is a remake.
Yeah, of the original German film, which itself is like a ripoff of the Universal Dracula movies. Is that right?
Kind of. Do you know the history of Nosferatu?
I don't.
The German film?
I mean, no more than what I just said.
Okay, I'll give you a quick overview. Right,
hit me.
So, F.W. Murnau, he made I'm pretty sure it's Murnau. He made this 1902 movie Nosferatu. It's 1922. It's like German impressionistic, like Cabinet Dr. Caligari, and it was definitely heavily influenced by Bram Stoker's Dracula. That's that tale. So much so that the Bram Stoker family, the trust, whatever, sued the filmmakers of Nosferatu for copyright infringement. They actually won, and a judge ordered all copies, and this is back in like the 1920s. Judge ordered all copies of Nosferatu to be destroyed because he determined it infringed on the copyright of Dracula. Thankfully, a couple copies survived, and now Nosferatu has become a classic of sound cinema.
Nice.
But it's one of these movies where it shouldn't have, legally, it should not exist based on the courts that they decided back then. And it's because, I mean, if you look at the story of Dracula and you look at Nosferatu, there's a lot of parallels between the two.
Sure. I've definitely never seen the original Nosferatu, but I have seen the old Dracula movie, like the first one.
Okay.
That Universal put out. And I mean, short of being black and white and them having vampires in them, I don't find a whole lot of similarities, to be honest. They're very different movies.
They're very different. Yeah. I think Bram Stoker Foundation or family was more suing because they thought that the Nosferatu ripped off the book Dracula.
Okay.
Which is probably closer. I don't know if you've seen the Francis Ford Coppola version from the 90s.
I have, yeah.
Okay, so like that is probably has more ties to Nosferatu than like the Universal Monsters
Sure.
Dracula.
Yeah. Yeah,
I-
because
I
the
think-
Universal Monster Dracula is like kind of supposed to be handsome and like debonair, even though he's
Right.
got like a white face and they have all the rules of being a vampire and stuff like that. Whereas at least this version of Nosferatu, the Robert Eggers version, I think those rules exist, but they're not really heavily focused on for most of the movie.
No, this version, and I should say the Nosferatu story, because it was
Mhm.
also remade by Werner Herzog in the 70s with Klaus
Okay.
Kinski. Have you seen that one?
No.
Okay, that's an interesting. It's a good Klaus Kinski performance. It's a
Okay.
good movie. It's a little slow.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like definitely this vampire, this Nosferatu, he's much more sickly looking. He looks more like a corpse,
Mm-hmm.
and he's more in line with the traditional vampire of being a corpse that awakens to
Sure.
feed on people. Where Bram Stoker's Dracula went more for like the handsome, sexy, the sexy Dracula. Let's basically put it that way. That's
Mhm.
kind of what Bram Stoker was doing with his. Was like here's the attractive, enticing, form.
Mhm.
Where Nosferatu is like, here's kind of the disgusting version of it. But Robert Eggers still kind of put like that enticement into his take on it. And the I don't know, the seduction of the vampire is definitely in this movie.
Sure, or control, I would say. You know what I mean? He's
Like-
very controlling.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Not very charming though. Not charming, not deceitful really. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't the original Dracula or the Draculas that I've seen over time mostly were like they're kind of like little tricksters. You know what I mean? Like they trick
Yes.
you into like inviting them in and all these other things. Whereas this one was just like, I'm gonna get you.
Right, yeah.
And there's nothing you can do to stop it type of attitude.
Exactly. Yeah, and like there's still a seduction to me, but it's not a traditional like, oh, look how attractive he is kind of seduction.
Right. Yeah, and like towards the end, it's like borderline blackmail. You know what I mean? No, we're not talking spoilers here, but
Right.
it's like that's how he's getting people to do what he wants. Is blackmail, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. If you don't do what I want, then all these terrible things will happen.
All
Yeah.
right. All right. Okay. So you enjoyed it.
I did. Yes.
Okay.
So like one thing I like about Robert Eggers is he's just such a unique filmmaker in the sense of he'll choose a style in a movie and he'll stick to it.
Mhm.
Right. And it could be Lighthouse being in 4x3, or it could be, like The Witch, where everything's kind of happening in the woods. Like if you think about The Witch, there's some horrific scenes in it,
Mhm.
but there's so much more just implication of horror that's happening in that movie.
Sure. The
You know, it's
the
more-
language in The Witch too is like really distinctive.
Right.
Yeah.
And like same for this movie, Nosferatu is speaking in like some like old Hungarian language that,
Mhm.
like it needed to be subtitled, but even if I understood the language, Bill Skarsgård's voice was so deep and distorted. Like I don't think I could have understood it if I even knew the language that was being spoken.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I mean, like in this movie, he definitely leans into the gothic horror. Everything's very gray in this movie. Like it's not shot in black and white, but it sure does look like black and white at times.
Yeah.
Like the only time there's ever color is either when there's like fire on screen or like towards the very end,
Mhm.
we could say. And even then that's jarring. Like when you see someone holding a torch, it's just so
Sure.
odd for the movie to be lit and to be bright.
I noticed it was definitely in color those moments, and also whenever there were children on screen, there was more.
Oh.
There was more color, certainly,
Interesting.
than when
Yeah.
it was Nosferatu with a victim type of thing.
Yep.
So I don't know. I'm assuming that's intentional.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. He's to me, he's a very intentional filmmaker about
Right.
how he wants his movies to look.
Yeah.
You could see in this movie, there's a lot of callbacks to the style of like German expressionism,
Mhm.
that era. Like I'm sure you remember there's a scene where the shadow of the hand is going up a hallway.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
a very famous shot from the original Nosferatu. That was just done with like lighting. You've probably seen that picture. If you Google like Nosferatu 1922, you'll see a shot of that.
Absolutely.
There was another moment where, who was it? what is it, like Ralph Ineson and Aaron Taylor-Joy were going to go. They're going to go find Willem Dafoe, and they're like walking like up an alley in a staircase with like big buildings on either side, and that looked like something out of Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. So I don't want to like list off all the references because I'm a nerd, but
Sure.
like, you could tell he was taking a story that was developed in the 20s, but also trying to mimic some of that style, incorporating into his own. So I liked all of that about it. I liked Lily Rose Depp a lot. I've never seen her in anything before.
Sure. I have, but I think maybe the only other movie I've seen her in is Yoga Hosers, Kevin Smith's Yoga
Kevin
Hosers,
Smith. Okay.
which is not a good movie
Okay.
for any person to be in. So like, I don't remember her in it, and that's probably for the better, I imagine, because the people I do remember from that movie are because it was, awful.
Right. Okay.
But I think wasn't she also in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Wasn't she like one of the girls, the young girls?
I don't think she was. Mikey
ranch?
Madison in our next movie, she was on the ranch. The Manson ranch.
Mikey Madison was one of the girls at the Manson house.
At the house. I think,
the end.
she was like the one in the pool at the edge.
She's the one that burns in the pool.
Yeah.
Yep. But the girls on the ranch were like a different set of girls. I'm pretty sure Lily Rose Depp is one of them, possibly.
Maybe. She might have been. I don't remember, so.
Doesn't matter. She's really good in this, and she
really good.
Is probably the best on-camera twitcher I think I've ever seen. Like the twitching and like the shaking and stuff like that. I don't know if there was like a little bit of like an in-camera effect going there as well, but if it wasn't, if it was all just body acting, it was like pretty crazy and impressive.
Because this is a kind of a possession movie at times, which is a little different take than I've seen on the Dragon Nosferatu story, where like people's bodies are being possessed and they're contorting in not weird, horrific ways, but just contorting in unnatural ways.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I haven't seen every vampire movie for sure, but I can't remember one where like the vampire is talking to its victims like from miles and miles away through like telepathy or whatever was going on. I don't know what was going on, but they don't explain it. But the idea that like he's visiting her in her dreams over the course of the film and stuff like that, that felt new and fresh to me.
Right.
As somebody who hasn't seen kind of the original. Do you remember if that's in any of the other incarnations of Nosferatu?
No, I would say the biggest addition that Eggers made to this movie was the prior connection between Nosferatu and the Lily Rose Depp character. I can't remember her name. Where like we get a little intro scene. This is at the very beginning where like she kind of pledges herself to the devil at the very beginning of the movie.
Right.
And that was kind of her pledging herself to this spirit that turns out to be Nosferatu. And then now he's coming back in the future to sort of collect on her soul and the seduction he has for her. And that is not in the other versions. Like her character is in the other versions, and her character has the sort of a similar story arc in the other versions, but she is not in the other versions. That character does not like beckon the demon to the town.
Sure. Yeah. I liked her performance. I mean, I really liked all the performances. Bill Skarsgård as the vampire was like just unrecognizable. I would say you would never guess that was him under there.
So I thought I knew it was a Skarsgård. I thought it was his older brother who was in the Northman. Because he's also like because this Nosferatu is a big guy, like he's big. And Alex Skarsgård is that the other brother?
Maybe.
Okay, so I thought it was Alexander Skarsgård the whole time, and then we got to the credits and like, oh, it's Bill. Like,
sure,
Pennywise.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare like Pennywise to the Crow to this, because he was in the Crow remake.
Oh, that's right, he was in
like,
the Crow.
It's kind of wild that that's the same person through all of them.
Through all three of those movies, yeah. But I mean, that's a testament to his acting that he can embody these 3 different characters. He finds. I never saw The Crow. I'm sure it's trash, but like it seems like he at least that's a separate character than Pennywise or this Nosferatu, who's this like hulking mass of decomposing. Well, I don't want to give away too much. They definitely try and hide what he looks like from you
until they don't.
Right, but like all the marketing doesn't reveal what he looks like at all.
Sure, and like 95% of the movie, they barely reveal it too.
Barely.
Yeah. They definitely like instead of having a big action piece or, you know, even like a big, I don't know what I want to say.
There's no big set piece to this movie.
Sure, they held the cards close and made the big reveal at the end. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm trying to beat around the bush, but also talk about what happens at the end. So
no, I think it's safe to say, you know, there's a vampire in this movie and this vampire does vampiric things, but you don't actually see it until like the very end.
Yeah. I mean, the movie, let's talk about the horror of the movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's doing its best version of a movie that was made a long time ago. You know what I mean?
102 years ago. Yes.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so there's certain things that still work that are tried and true. And there are certain things from 100 years ago that like may have scared an audience back then, but it's not scary now.
Right.
And how did you feel? Like, did this movie ever scare you?
I mean, so there are some jump scares that are kind of cheap of like something popping on the screen. So like those made me jump because they're startling.
Right.
But no, like I never felt fear.
Mm-hmm.
Or there was never a moment where like a character was going somewhere. I'm like, don't go down there, or like, what's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe because I kind of knew what was going to happen because I've seen this movie twice already now.
Sure.
But yeah, so I would not call it scary in the traditional sense. I mean, it's a horror film, like, and if there are scary things, and if you don't like seeing certain imagery, you could find that scary.
Sure.
But like there wasn't tension to the movie, if that makes sense. Did you ever feel like tense or moments of tension in this movie?
I'd say I felt fleeting moments of tension.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but nothing like insane.
Right.
It wasn't very scary. Like, and and really, like, with the exception of right at the end, not really that graphic either. If you were a child, I think this could be very scary.
For sure, yes.
But as an adult, it's all boogeyman under the bed type stuff, mostly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so until you get to the very end, they definitely, like, that last shot on the bed was almost everything I needed from a payoff perspective.
The last shot on the bed, or the shot before the last shot on the bed?
That sequence in general.
Okay. Yes. The whole bed sequence. Yes, I agree.
I would say was a good payoff for a movie that's not going to have a chase scene. It's not going to have, you know what I mean? It's not going to have some crazy climactic, you know, action sequence or yeah. It's not.
They're not chasing Frankenstein out the castle or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's pretty much like kind of a moody, stylistic, plot heavy movie all the way up to that moment.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then not that it stops being those things, but it at least has an ending to it and kind of like a peak to what's going on. I also really liked the plague aspect of it. I just was not expecting that at all. Like that plot twist. And so I enjoyed that. And the whole idea of like him coming over on the boat and what happens on the boat and stuff like that was all good. I mean, I figured everybody was going to make a pilgrimage to Transylvania.
Oh, to go see him. Yeah.
To go see him. Yeah. So it was a cool surprise to me that I was getting a little bit of a reverse of that. Do you remember in the originals, does he travel as much as he does in this movie? In the original?
Yeah, so that's a through line through all of them. Okay. Is that he buys a house in this German town, and then he travels there via a boat. I think the boat's the Demeter, because wasn't a movie last year like The Last Voyage of the Demeter?
I don't know.
Okay, I remember there being one last year, and that's a movie like about just the voyage and like all the crew being killed.
Sure.
But yeah, he travels via boat in his coffin with all these rats, and then this ghost ship. I'm trying to spoil too much, but
sure.
Yeah, like then essentially this crewless ghost ship shows up in this German town, and then this plague happens, and yeah,
sure. I also really enjoyed Willem Dafoe in this. He was just kind of delightful in a movie full of like kind of like some very buttoned up performances, at least before he shows up on screen. It's real buttoned up, and then he's like kind of a breath of fresh air halfway through the movie.
He's almost comic relief. Almost like he's towing that line in a rather dour, serious gothic horror movie.
Sure.
That like he's the one who kind of like believes everyone, like, yeah, oh yeah, this is definitely happening, and like there's the unexplained out there, and he's a bit eccentric, and all these button up people are like, oh, what are you talking about, sir?
Sure.
So, yeah. Who the only person who I thought was not like, this was a pretty solid cast, but I found Aaron Taylor Johnson's performance just did not fit with everyone else
as the kind of husband of the friend's husband.
He was the husband of the friend, and he just would be either he was very buttoned up or he was very big, and those were like the two choices he made. And I just wasn't getting the range for him that I was getting from like Lily Rose Depp and Nicholas Hoult and Willem Dafoe and Ralph Ineson and all these other people in this movie who I thought were like really selling it to me. Aaron Taylor Johnson was giving me two moods.
I didn't really have a problem with him. In fact, he's the only one that I felt sorry for, because he just kind of seemed like a guy who doesn't have anything to do with any of this. And then like his quote unquote friends brought this horrible thing into his life.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he never really seemed to blame anybody for doing that. And I kind of respected him for that. You know what I mean? He was never like, this is your fault.
He eventually kind of let off on the wife of it, not his wife, but on Lily Rose Depp's character, didn't he? At some point,
I don't remember.
I think at some point he banished her from the house. He was like, "All right, enough is enough."
You're right. Well, he kicks her out because it's like, we can't get into it.
We can't get into it. Yeah, right.
Stuff happens.
Yeah.
Stuff happens, and he's realizing that he can't control anything, and so he's trying to simplify.
Right. What can I control here? Yeah.
Right.
I think if I had one other critique, it's, and this is because Robert Eggers is remaking a movie, but like I would say of his 4 movies, this is the least Robert Eggers feeling, or this is the most traditional movie he's made so far.
Yeah, it's weird because it feels, I haven't seen the original, but it felt to me like he was making a remake of an old movie.
Oh yeah,
which he was doing.
The only thing he really added was the seduction elements between, which is kind of in the Werner Herzog adds a little bit of that into his, and I think Eggers was taking the Werner Herzog aspect and going even farther with it.
Yeah, it wasn't until that bed scene that I was like, okay, I'm not sure the one from 1922 went here.
No, not at all.
No. But that's like right at the end. You know what I mean? Like 2 hours in, then you're finally getting something that probably wasn't in the 1920s version. And the look and feel remind me of Robert Eggers.
Right.
Not necessarily because it's a thing he did, just a thing that I believed before I even saw frame 1 of this movie he could emulate. You know what I mean? Like this.
Right.
This is kind of feels up his alley. But it didn't feel like he innovated on it. It felt like a little bit of an impression.
Yeah. I think impressionistic is a great way to describe this movie.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm not sure I prefer him doing an impression of something that already exists versus what he did in Northman. You know what I mean? Or what he did in The Lighthouse.
The Lighthouse, yeah.
Yeah, he gave something his own look, essentially. But I wasn't upset with this movie. It was, especially as somebody who hadn't seen the originals. It
Right.
felt fresh to me.
And this is more of a small critique. I wasn't watching this movie like, oh my God, he's just doing 1922 again. Like, it was just more of like, so I saw this with my dad.
Mhm.
And my dad had never seen a Robert Eggers movie before.
Okay.
So afterwards, he was like, oh yeah, what other movies has he done? And so I was thinking about The Witch and The Northman and The Lighthouse. And I was like, oh, actually, this is his most traditional movie he's done yet, if you compare it to like just those four.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is literally traditional by definition. Like, it's a remake of a movie.
Right, exactly.
From the 1920s, in which he's mostly doing it, trying to give you the same vibes as that original, I'm assuming. But with his own kind of vibe to it. What about like the weird pans? Is that in the original too? Do you remember? Like weird pans as in he did a lot of things where he would like frame a doorway at night so that you're seeing like the street lights in the background and everything in the foreground is in shadow. And then he would just like turn the camera towards the wall and you would get like 10 seconds of the wall until now you're looking at a staircase.
Oh,
you know what I mean? With its own shaft of light type of thing. There was like sequences where he would do that. Just kind of pivot the camera on a tripod type of thing.
Yeah. I don't think the tripod was invented in 1922. So
Sure.
yeah, no, definitely in the 20s, they weren't panning the camera.
Right.
It was pretty much locked. It's very much like the stage, the fourth wall aspect in those movies.
Sure. Nice. Okay. Anything else with Nosferatu? We definitely need to discuss.
Are you interested in seeing either the original or the Werner Herzog version from the 70s?
I'm interested. I don't know. I have so many other things I have to get to. I can't imagine that it would be like real high on the list.
Okay. Yeah.
Unless you're telling me that I should. Like, is that going to change anything for me?
I mean, I think you, as a fan of film,
mm-hmm.
I think you should, not because it's homework, but like,
sure,
because it is a
notable horror,
notable landmark movie.
Sure.
Yeah. In my opinion, I know we talked about this. I think Dr. Caligari does it better, or is I think Dr. Caligari is more interesting.
Mm-hmm. That's not a vampire movie, though, right?
No, but that's still a monster. It's like a zombie.
Gotcha.
It's a zombie-ish movie. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I definitely think Nosferatu, it's a seminal film and it's worth watching. And I kind of want to rewatch it. I've only seen it the one time, and after watching now the Eggers version and the Herzog version, I want to go back and revisit it and see sort of like what's the same, what's different. Yeah.
Sure. I have the Herzog version on Blu-ray.
Okay.
But I've never seen it. It's in a set of a bunch of other movies.
Yeah.
So
I think it's worth it because of the two lead performances. Klaus Kinski plays Count Orlog, Nosferatu, and then I can't remember the woman is Isabella, not Isabel Rossellini, Isabel something. She plays like the Catherine or whatever, the Lily Rose Depp character, and she's really good in it too.
Is it named Nosferatu, the Herzog remake?
Yeah, it's like Nosferatu : the Vampire or something like that.
Maybe I don't have it then. It's not in this set. But I thought most of his movies were in this set. So
interesting.
What?
Oh, it's interesting that when you go to
year?
like 78, maybe mid 70s.
Okay. Oh, there it is. 1979, Nosferatu the Vampire with a PYRE.
Yes, that's what it is. The Vampire. Yep.
It's in here. This set's awesome.
But that's a great set there.
But it's region 2.
Oh, so you need a special player for that.
Well, I just use my PS4 because you can tell the PS4 to be region B.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I play all my region B on my PS4 and all my 4Ks and American discs on the 4K player.
Perfect.
North American discs, I should say, not American.
North American. There is one more movie I want to see that's related to all this. It came out in the early 90s. It's called Shadow of a Vampire.
I've seen it. It's good.
Okay, with Willem Dafoe, and it's like a fictional making of the 1920s Nosferatu, correct?
Yes.
Is it worth seeing?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
At the time, I believe Willem Dafoe, who plays the vampire in the movie, I believe he got nominated for an Oscar. Yes.
He may have. Okay.
Dafoe got nominated but did not win for an Oscar.
Okay.
He's really good as the actor. It's one of those movies where like the actor, how much do you want to know? This isn't really a spoiler, but maybe
No, go for it.
having been so far away from the marketing, you might not know this. But
Okay.
the movie is about a guy who plays Nosferatu in a movie, and then something happens and he legitimately turns into the vampire.
Oh, interesting.
But the people
Okay.
making the movie don't know that
Yeah.
type of thing. Or maybe
I
I might be making that up in my brain. It might be that they actually cast him and he is a vampire. Or something like that.
Yeah, from looking at Letterboxd, it says the director makes a Faustian pact with the vampire to get him to star in his movie.
That's what it is.
That's
yeah.
what it is. Okay.
So he doesn't turn into a vampire. It's like he is a vampire, but the crew doesn't know that.
They think he's an actor. Interesting.
Right. They think he's like a quirky, what do they call it? Like when you're like so into the role that
like a method actor?
Yeah, like he's a method
Yeah.
actor, like the weirdest method actor they've ever met, because he won't stop being a weird Nosferatu like vampire. So no, totally worth it. It's like a comedy, but like an indie comedy. So it's not gonna be joke, laugh a minute, but
Right.
it's pretty funny. It's got Carrie Ells in it too, from Princess Bride.
Carrie Elvis.
I think it's just Ells. Like
I thought it was
W
Elvez. I thought the W is pronounced like a V. Most
I
people
don't
say
know.
that like Elwes or Els or Yules, whatever, but I think it's.
I thought the W was silent.
Interesting. Okay, we'll have to do some. We'll do some research. Is it silent W or is it like a Elvez kind of last name?
Yeah, I don't know. But that's a good one. You should check that out before you rewatch the original Nosferatu.
I will. I'll check that out.
Because I guarantee there's references back and forth.
I'm sure between the two.
Yeah, for sure.
And a fun little Easter egg.
Mhm.
So the actor who played the original Nosferatu in the 20s was named Max Schreck,
Okay.
who's also the name of a character in Batman Returns. Good old, what's his name? Christopher Walken. I'd like do the voice in my head. Yeah, Christopher Walken's character in Batman Returns is called Max Schreck.
Interesting.
So.
That's a very Burton thing to do.
Oh yeah, well I've said it before, but if you watch German Impressionistic and you watch Burton, you're like, okay, I understand where you got this from. So
Sure. Yeah. All right. If there's nothing else, then let's letterbox Nosferatu from 2024. What are you going to give it out of 5 stars?
Give it 4 stars.
I also gave it 4 stars. Nice. 2 4 stars for Nosferatu. We saw another movie this past week. This one is titled Anora. It's a little different for sure, but also from an A24 alum.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna get into it right after this clip.
Hi, I'm here for Mr. Zakharov.
Ivan?
Yeah.
Hi, hello, what's up? Come in, please. So, welcome to my humble abode. Hugs.
Oh, yes.
Can I help you?
Oh, thank you.
Oof, you look beautiful, awesome.
Oh, thank you.
First change, repeat.
That was Anora, a 2024 American comedy drama written, directed, and edited by Sean Baker and starring Mikey Madison, Mark something or other, Yura Borisov, Karen Karagulian,
It just gets worse from here.
Tovmasian, Alexei Serebryakov, and Daria Ekamasova, amongst others.
Amongst others, yeah.
The official,
amongst other Russian names.
Right. The official IMDb plot synopsis for Anora is Anora, a young sex worker from Brooklyn, meets and impulsively marries the son of an oligarch. Once the news reaches Russia, her fairy tale is threatened as his parents set out for New York to get the marriage annulled.
I think it's a great setup. Yeah.
Yeah, that works. We're going to talk spoiler free right now about this movie, but we're also going to do a spoiler chat. So just know that there's 2 parts to this review. And if you've never seen Anora, you can listen on for now. But at some point, we will tell you to go away to talk spoilers. All right. So Anora, spoiler free. What did you think of it, Kyle?
I thought this movie was great. I'm just going to come out and say it.
I did as well. I'll just come out and say it. This is probably going to be a love fest, I imagine.
I agree. I agree. Yes.
The only shame about this movie, and it's not a criticism about the movie, it's a criticism about, I don't know, prudishness.
I know you're going with this. Yeah.
The only shame about this movie is like I just can't share it with anybody I want.
So there is, I think it's fair to say in the first half hour, there is a lot of sex. There is stripping. There is.
It's not even sex unless you consider a strip club sex. To me, it's just like the weirdest thing. I've only been to a couple strip clubs in my life and they all weirded me out.
They're not pleasant places for me. No.
Right. For sure. So to me, I just don't think sex in a strip club, but clearly that kind of stuff goes on. You know what I mean?
Right.
So whenever I see a strip club in a movie or sex or strip club nudity in a movie, I am the farthest from turned on.
Yeah, right. No, it's not titillating whatsoever because like because you're watching a business transaction happening, right?
Right.
It's just a fleshy business transaction.
But there is a lot of skin in the first 30 minutes of this movie.
And there are sex scenes in the movie. They're not long. They're rather short sex scenes for comedic effect at times, but
right. I can't even think of any that weren't just for comedic effect. Were there?
I think most of the time that we were shown people having sex, it was like kind of almost silly. Like, wow, look what's happening right now. So
right.
Yeah. Or look at the immaturity of these people. Sure. Yeah. It's I saw Nosferatu with my dad. I did not see Anora with my dad, but I did mention I saw it, and he's like, "Oh, what'd you think of it?" And I told him I liked it. I recommended it. I'm like, but my parents aren't prude, but like I just want to let you know, like there is a fair amount of sex in the movie. It is about a sex worker, so be prepared that A, you're going to watch that, and B, your son is recommending this movie to you, not because of that, but because
it goes somewhere after that. Yeah,
it does go somewhere. Yeah,
all right.
I think, yeah. So I mean, like in this movie, I was hooked by Mikey Madison's performance immediately. She plays Anora. She goes by Annie, and she just right away came off as a very real character, like a real person. And I think Sean Baker has that ability, like with his writing, with his casting, is all his characters feel like real people.
Sure.
And yeah, sometimes he does a better job of casting either unknowns or lesser known actors, which helps a lot because you're not like, oh, it's that person from another thing. But you see Annie, you see the line of work she's doing. You see her get involved with this, this young Russian oligarch's son who's just sort of like impulsive and wants to party all the time. And, she's like, yeah, this could be an out for me. Why not?
Sure.
And like every step of the way is believable. And there wasn't any point I was like, well, this wouldn't happen. Like no one would do that. Like I believed everything she was doing. And I appreciated that we don't get a ton of her backstory, but she's not a tragic character. Like this isn't like the mom in Florida Project. Right? Like that mom, you're like, oh man, like if only she made the right decision, or like if only she got the help she needed.
She was like her own worst enemy in that movie.
Exactly. Yeah. In this case, everyone is just not quite smart enough, or they don't quite think ahead. And I'm talking about everyone in this movie. No one thinks ahead more than one step, and this includes characters that show up later in the movie that I don't want to get into because that's kind of spoils where it's going. So I like that everyone in this movie was just smart enough, but also just dumb enough. that you could believe, oh yeah, I could see how these people would get in this situation because they're just not quite putting all the pieces together.
Yeah, I mean, I think a part of that was, I think we're conditioned, or at least I'm conditioned to, if something happens in the movie, then these three things will probably happen next.
Right. Yeah.
And those three things are typically movie things, not real life things. You know what I mean? Those directions are like where screenwriters who are trying to write a screenplay that will keep you engaged would go in order to accomplish that. Whereas this movie, whenever it's confronted with a split in the path where you should take one of those three exciting options to move the plot that direction, instead they constantly subverted that in the most normal way possible.
Yes.
The most non-movie real life person way possible. It's kind of like, what's that saying where like if let's say, I don't know, I don't know, I can't even think of an example, but the saying is something about like, whatever the most explainable reason for something is probably the reason.
The simplest solution is probably the solution.
Right. Exactly.
Yes. Yep.
And that's like how this entire movie played out, is like every time it could have become movie logic, it didn't. Instead, it kept itself grounded and said, oh yeah, you expected us to go that way. And not only are we not going to go that way, but we're going to make these people so relatable and so likable that even the ones you're not supposed to like, you're going to like them by the end of the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And I kind of love that, just because we never get that. You know what I mean? Like, people are, I think a lot of movies, and this isn't even a problem, it's just the nature of the beast, doesn't have too much confidence in the people that are watching it. And so they intentionally just drill it into your head. Good guy, bad guy. Now you know who to cheer for. Now let's do 30 minutes of whatever.
Let's have them chase each other for a while.
Right.
Or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll give the bad guy a little bit of depth to make it more interesting. But it generally stays pretty shallow, because they don't give breath or room for those types of things. And in this movie, I felt like the entire movie is just actively working against your preconceived notion of people, whether that be a sex worker, whether that be a young Russian millionaire, or other people we're not going to talk about right now. I just loved that it constantly subverted those expectations. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. Again, the only hesitation I have at this entire movie is that it opens with like 6 lap dances in like the first minute.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
We spent a lot of time in strip clubs in the first third of this movie.
Yeah. I mean, there's another one called Animal something Animals.
Okay.
That starts with overweight people naked on a camera set, on like a photography set. And it's very stylish. It's like the opening credits. The movie's great. I can't recommend it.
Right. Yeah. Just because visually there's something else going on there.
The rest of the movie, totally fine. But that first 3-4 minutes is like, there's just so many people that I can give this to that aren't going to be like, okay, I'm out.
Yeah.
Anyway, but with Anora, I think what really sells it, on top of Sean Baker's clear style, and applying that style to kind of a little bit of like a chase movie, road movie. Somebody described it as a mixture of The Hangover. What was the other movie?
So I got Zola vibes from this. I don't know if that's...
It has a little bit of Zola vibes. It's way better than Zola though, but it's...
I like Zola.
I like
it's
Zola
better than
too.
Zola. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
But there's something about this one, I would say, that like Zola I liked, but it's not a top 10 movie for me. Whereas Anora,
this movie hooks you. Yeah.
And we haven't really talked about it, but this is by far the funniest movie I saw this year. By far.
For me, it's the second funniest.
Okay. What's the first?
Have you seen Babes?
I did see Babes, and Babes has funny moments for sure.
Okay.
So you liked Babes?
I liked Babes.
We
I
haven't
think
talked
Babes,
about it at all, but
no,
yeah.
we haven't had a chance to do like a top. When we do our top 20 of 2024,
we'll be
Babes
talking
will
about
get it.
a lot of movies neither of us have talked about.
Exactly. So I'm actually looking forward to that. But I for me, this was a funny movie. Like this is
Sure.
I don't call it a dark comedy per
Mhm.
se, because like this movie, it never feels dire, which I kind of appreciated.
It heads in dire directions, and you're expecting it to keep going there, and then it doesn't.
Right. It doesn't. Yeah. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm glad that it's not, because you could think about, oh yeah, this is a movie about a, naive sex worker who marries a Russian oligarch's son. You're like, oh man, how dark is this going to get? And
Mhm.
I mean, spoiler alerts, it doesn't get as dire and dark as you think it's going to go.
Sure.
So yeah, it goes unexpected places. And it's, yeah, there is a farcical nature to this whole movie.
Mhm. But yet it felt like all of that could have happened.
For sure. Yes. Yeah.
I also liked how the movie would actively work against like what you imagine most people's preconceived notion of an archetype would be. Like with the sex workers, the most obvious example is like they're showing you that she's a fully fleshed out person who knows what decisions she's making. She's clearly good at her job. And I'm not even talking about, the strip club work. I'm talking about like knowing how to talk to people, how to figure out
How to work with clients,
who they are,
Yes.
what they want, make them comfortable, figure out how to extract money from them. You know what I mean? Like she's
Right.
good. She's good at this, clearly. And so I think that immediately kind of changes the calculation of what your average person would think about, a quote unquote stripper or a sex worker.
Mhm.
And at the same time, they're like, we just spent 20, 30 minutes working against the cliche. And now we're going to also confirm that the cliche can be true at the same time.
Exactly. Yes.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
and I'm just using her as an example. They do that with almost every character in the movie. You know what I mean? Actively work against the cliche and then do the cliche.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of the whole, like, everyone's smart, but not quite smart enough for the movie.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked that about it. And the energy for this one, kind of halfway through the movie, maybe not even halfway, maybe a third through the movie, right before
Are
they
we
get to the introduction of other characters.
Okay. Yeah.
Like the speed of the movie changes. The stakes certainly change, like just the whole, I felt like I was a little bit on like a terrifying roller coaster.
Right. Yeah.
A roller coaster that's supposed to be fun. Like the terrifying part is the fun part. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you're intentionally getting on a roller coaster to be terrified. I felt like this movie kind of does that for like 25 minutes or so, right in the middle, when you don't really know what's going on.
Like, are we talking in the house?
In the house.
In the house. Yes.
The scenes in the house. I was like white knuckling what was going to happen to certain people. And because there's a lot of unknowns happening.
Mhm.
And it was just kind of charming how it all works out in a weird way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, I appreciate that, especially the Annie character. Like, she does grow or learn, or like she starts the movie, and especially when the stakes get ramped up, she starts the stakes at one point of like, no, this is what I want, this is what we want, and this is what we need. And by the end of the movie, she has completely re-evaluated the decisions she's made.
Sure.
And not her life per se. I'm not saying like she's left the movie like a changed person, but she's definitely changed her thoughts on the whole situation she's just been through.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But the centerpiece is definitely Mikey Madison. I mean, she kills it through the whole movie.
I mean, she is in pretty much every scene of the movie.
Yeah. I mean, every other performance is just in service of her, basically.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the other cast members definitely bring their own flavor to the movie that buoys it all. But if she didn't work so well as that character,
Mhm.
it would not be the same movie. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like
yeah.
they're just the other performances are not enough to carry somebody who wasn't ready to be the lead of the movie, and clearly she knocked it out of the park. I don't think. I mean, if I've seen her in other things, which I have, she's just never been even a notable character. You know what I mean? Like barely even a speaking lines in things that I've
Yes.
seen. So it was kind of my first experience with a 2-hour movie focused on this person. And I was impressed. I mean, I had no preconceived notion, and then I listened to like a couple cast interviews and stuff like that. She's like a totally different person in real life. That blows
yeah.
blows my mind, because I would have assumed, kind of like what Sean Baker did with Florida Project, like he just got a girl who had never acted, who had the look he wanted on Instagram. You know what I mean? Like he knew the actress
for the kid or for the mom.
No, the actress in Florida Project had never acted in anything.
Sorry, the kid actress or the mom actress?
The mom.
The mom. Okay.
And maybe the kid too. I don't know. But the mom he found on Instagram.
Okay. Yeah.
Liked the vibe of her photos. Felt her photos on Instagram fit the vibe of Florida Project.
Wow. Yeah.
And reached out to her and just gave her the job after a phone call. That's crazy. But it worked out. Whereas this one, clearly he hired an actress that spent a lot of time making sure that character was perfect, and completely opposite of how she is in real life. So when I was watching it, I had that Florida Project story in the back of my mind, and I thought for sure he just got some girl from New Jersey and
they like just went to a strip club, found a girl, and said, "Hey, you'd be great in my movie."
Right.
Yeah.
When this time he got an actress who put in the work, and that's impressive. So much so that like she is super shy and has no social media presence.
Really?
Not even an Instagram.
Wow.
None. Which is crazy for like a mid-20s person.
Yeah, exactly.
Guy or girl, you got something online. Even if you're not like an active poster, you have something.
Right.
But she doesn't. And that's crazy for an actress or an actor of her age. Yeah, I was impressed by the whole cast, but really none of it works without her. And she's really good. I can't think of any, like, let's just talk awards. I haven't seen everything this year, but I can't think of anything that even comes close from like a best actress perspective.
What about The Substance?
Maybe like Demi Moore. Demi Moore's great in it. It's definitely out away from most things Demi Moore does. I think this beats what's her name? Also from The Substance.
Margaret Qualley.
Margaret Qualley. She's great in that too, but it's not the same thing as what Demi Moore is doing in that movie or what Mikey Madison's doing in this movie. Maybe that's her best competition, but I would still give it to Mikey Madison over Demi Moore.
I don't want to play the Oscar guessing game yet, but I'm going to. I agree. I think Mikey Madison is the better performance. I think if it's Mikey Madison versus Demi Moore, there is a strong chance Demi Moore gets the win because of like the politics and the prestige and the recognition of her work.
Sure. The only thing I think maybe might trip her up is the content of The Substance.
Yeah.
I think there are
Demi Moore. Yes.
Yeah. Might trip up Demi Moore is just that some people may not have seen it at all. Even though both of them have what some people would consider extreme content, I think The Substance has extreme content. I don't think Anora really does. As long as you can handle a little bit of flesh, you know what I mean? It's like not, I don't know.
Yeah. Definitely The Substance goes in weirder places, and it's a darker movie than this one. But I don't think it's fair to compare two movies just because, they're both female-led movies, so let's compare these two. Right?
No, the difference is Anora, I think, is by design a very watchable movie.
Yes, it's accessible.
And the substance is by design a movie that's intentionally challenging you while you watch it.
Yes.
And maybe they both challenge you intentionally, but like the way Anora does it is far more subtler by design. You know, the content of it doesn't drive it to be unsubtle, whereas the substance is intentionally not being subtle, and trying to kind of like jam its thoughts down your throat, which I loved, by the way. But
oh yeah, no, it's substance. Again, another movie that's going to appear on my top 20 of 2024.
But
next week.
The substance is not for normies for every reason other than nudity, in my opinion. And the Anora is maybe not for normies for one reason only, and it's nudity. So that and like a cavalier attitude about sex work. I think there's some people that just won't like that.
Right. No, I mean, this movie does not judge Annie for her career and what the choices she makes in that sense whatsoever.
Right. Although, and we'll get into this in spoilers, there's a little bit of a commentary at the end.
Yeah, I want to talk about the ending because there's a lot that happens in like the last 2 minutes of this movie.
For sure.
Just emotionally, a lot happens.
Definitely. I did have another little criticism, but I don't know how it would be any different. Is like Anora's kind of long.
So I have a similar criticism, and for me, I felt the length in the first half hour.
Okay, and
just because
in the strip club and the initial romance type stuff,
right? Because like a lot of it is just like party, sex, drugs, party, and like after half an hour of it, like okay, like I get it. These guys. They party all the time. They like
each other.
They like each other. There's no responsibility. And it's sort of like, okay, I got it after 20 minutes of parties and sex. I get it. This movie went 10 minutes longer, and then it kind of kicked in like the engagement and then everything that happens afterwards.
Sure.
But I think once it got going, I was no longer I'm not even bored. I was not feeling the runtime once it got going. I was feeling the first half hour.
Yeah, I felt like the whole thing moved, but also for what actually happened, I don't know how they filled 2 hours and 19 minutes. You know what I mean? Like there's not 2 hours and 19 minutes of plot there. That's for sure. Oh, I know what the movie was. It was Uncut Gems mixed with The Hangover. Like they were like, if you take those two movies and mix them, you have Anora, which is really reductive because there's more pieces to it than that for sure. But from a vibe perspective, that made sense to me.
Yeah, no, I would agree. It definitely has a Safdie Brothers feel to it.
Yeah.
And I mean, and Sean Baker as an independent director is such an interesting artist. Because I'm assuming this is probably his biggest budget yet. Like he's actually working with he's casting at least an actual name as the lead actor, not unknowns. But he's still doing like his guerrilla filmmaking where they're going out like on Fremont Street. Like when they first got married and they're walking around Vegas. I assume there's no permit for that. They probably just took the actors, put them in, put a camera in front of them and had them walk around and just celebrate in front of the public.
Yeah. Could be.
And there was multiple times when like characters were in public in this movie. I'm like, I don't think these are actors. I think this is just the actors are in public and there's a camera somewhere filming everything that's happening.
Absolutely. I could see that definitely. This was 6 million and I think his next biggest is 2 million.
Yeah.
So it's more, but it's not like a big budget movie. That's for sure.
No, it's not like he's not they gave him like 80 million to make a movie, but
right.
Do you think would he accept 80 million from like a Warner Brothers, I don't know, from a studio to make a movie, or you think he's happy in his own like lane?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. We live in a world where Barry Jenkins just made Mufasa, so
right.
nothing is impossible.
Let me. I have a Mufasa side also, but I'll get to that in a second. Let me reframe this. Which Marvel character is Sean Baker gonna direct next?
I hope he doesn't do that. I'd be surprised, just because I've heard a lot of interviews recently about Anora with him, and he does not sound like a guy who's in a place in life where he's looking to do much more than what he's currently doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he doesn't seem. He seems to enjoy what he's currently doing, and he doesn't seem to have any ambition to like have huge budgets or make big productions. But that being said, if somebody handed him a bunch of money and said, "Go do what you want," I bet he would probably do it. Like, why wouldn't you if somebody...
Right, exactly, yeah. He's gonna do like the Squirrel Girl movie, but like the dark side of Squirrel Girl.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that they would never do that just because of what his body of work currently, has been. But at the same time, they gave, what's her name, Eternals, and that didn't make any sense at all.
Oh, Chloe Zhao?
Yeah. Why? I don't know what they were thinking giving that movie to Chloe Zhao. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
They saw Nomadland, and they were like, just give her 6 robots and see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah. I still, to this day, don't understand. Other than like, hey, we can get a prestige director. Like, what was the point of that? I don't know.
Yeah. It's not like she left her mark all over that movie. So.
Yeah. And they gave her the movie that was probably going to fail no matter who directed it. And that's weird too.
Yeah.
Okay. Anora. Anything else before we jump into spoilers? Anything else we have to say?
Nothing. Non-spoiler, no.
I think let's sum it up real quick. I think it's great. I had a lot of fun watching this. I laughed my butt off. I was fearful for the characters and excited when they make it through certain things. Little devastated at the end, but in a good way. I think the movie has an emotional payoff despite some of the chaos in it. Yeah, I think maybe not easily, but probably my favorite Sean Baker movie.
Yeah, I've only seen Florida Project and this one.
Oh, you haven't seen Tangerine yet.
I have not seen Tangerine or
Red Rocket.
Red Rocket? Yeah.
Those are the ones that are well known. He's got a couple more.
Okay.
Tangerine is great. That's his breakout movie. But the one right before it is also really quite good. Starlet.
I've heard it. Okay, I've heard of that.
From 2012. And that one is about a prostitute. There's definitely a running theme from Starlet on. They're all have some kind of sex work
in them. Yeah.
Either in them or as the main topic. You know what I mean? As the main, driving thrust. Then he's got 3 before that I haven't seen. 4-letter words, Takeout, and The Prince of Broadway. And I know Takeout was like the movie that got him known on the indie circuit. And then Tangerine broke out bigger than that type of thing.
That was, yeah.
So,
and that's a movie about trans sex work, if I'm not mistaken.
Tangerine is, yes. But Tangerine, they filmed on an iPhone with no permits on the streets of LA. Okay.
And we're actually talking like on an iPhone, not like an iPhone plugged into some crazy camera rig like Danny Boyle's doing with 28 years later.
Well, since they made it in LA, they're like, LA is like, I heard this in an interview. LA is hypersensitive on getting film permits for everything. You know what I mean? Like,
sure. Yeah.
It's LA. It's Hollywood. So they're trying to play by the book. And that's how they make money in LA. So he intentionally shot as small factor as he could so that he could get away with filming on the busy streets of LA without anybody knowing that they're actually filming like a real movie.
Good for him. Yeah.
So they had one audio guy that had a hidden microphone, essentially, a hidden boom mic. The guy would like pull out the boom mic and he would whip out his cell phone and they would just film a scene real quick and then leave the street they were currently on.
Right. So before someone shows up.
Even if somebody saw them, they're on to another location.
Wow.
Yeah. It was wild. Anyway, but I'm jealous that you you have Tangerine in front of you and Starlight. Red Rocket's fun, but it's not as good as the other
Okay,
ones.
it's not as essential as like Tangerine or the other one. Okay, I will add Tangerine to my watch list.
Red Rocket's the one that feels the most like a movie, in my opinion. Like a normal movie, like a normal comedy.
Right.
It's definitely a comedy first. Red Rocket is. Florida Project and Tangerine feel like, indie auteur movies.
Right.
And Anora is like the perfect mix of those two.
Yeah, it's got like a definitely indie vibe to it.
But it's funny.
It's fun. Yeah.
And fast moving.
It's a fun movie.
And all those things. So, okay, let's letterbox this and then get into spoilers for Anora. What did you give it out of 5 stars?
4.5.
I give this one a 5.
Nice.
Probably more of a 4.5 because of the length, but it didn't really bother me. So
yeah, I think just for me, it just took a little bit longer to get into.
Sure.
But once it started, I mean, again, Mikey Madison, she hooked me. Like I was there for her performance.
Mm-hmm.
But story wise, I was like, okay, where are we going? And then once the story kicked in, I was like, okay, I'm set.
Yep.
No complaints here on out.
Absolutely. Okay, so if you want to hear spoilers for Anora, stick around after the final song of this episode. We appreciate you joining us for episode 663 of the Cinereelists podcast. Don't forget, check out the YouTube version on YouTube. Subscribe. You could leave us an Apple Podcast review. We'd appreciate that. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com, or send us an email. Links are in the description to do all of those kinds of things. You could also follow us on social media on TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Cinereelists, or you can follow me on my personal Twitter, Blue Sky, or Letterboxd account at EOJRB.
Find me on Letterboxd at Peter SKB.
We will be back next week, most likely with our top 20 movies of 2024. That's probably going to happen. Like 90%, I would say. That's going to happen next week. So be ready for that. And if you're a longtime listener, every year we ask for submissions for your listener top 10s. Feel free to start sending those in. If you have a top 10 or a top 20 favorite movies of 2024, please send them our way via email, link in the description, and we will include it in our listener aggregate here in a couple of weeks. So don't forget to do that. And with all that, stick around for the spoilers, and we'll see you next time. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
This is spoilers for Anora. If you haven't seen Anora, and you want to stay spoiler free, you should pause this and come back to it later, because we're going to talk openly and freely about the movie. If you have seen it or you don't care about spoilers, then listen on. Okay, so this is a weird spoiler, but basically the movie introduces a bunch of characters maybe a third of the way through that are all kind of feel like gangsters, Russian gangsters, mafia type people. I don't know. That's the vibe I got.
They're all kind of like low-level cleaners.
Right.
Like no one's, we never really learn about the Russian oligarch and the family. We know it's a big name. They have lots of money. These guys seem more like babysitters. Like they've been tasked, and we kind of get the impression that in the past this son has always gone into trouble and done stupid things, and he's been living in America, and the family's got a couple of people in New York City who are like, hey, go check on him, go clean up his mess. But they're not gangsters in the fact of like no one's pulling a gun out, no one's like saying like, oh, we'll drop you in the river if you don't do what we tell you to do.
Right. But that's totally what I expected from these characters.
Oh, right. When you first are told, like, get the Albanian and the Russian, you're like, well, that doesn't sound good whatsoever.
Right. And then you have, like, the bald-headed guy, Igor, who, like, shows up and is clearly the muscle type of thing. And you know that this is at a moment where the two younger people have gotten married, the oligarch and the sex worker,
and Annie,
and you know that's not gonna go well, this marriage. Right. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's
yes.
Just how bad is it
so
gonna be?
Impulsive. Right.
How bad is it gonna be? Like from like a not even their relationship. It's just like the Russian family is not going to be on board with this, clearly.
Not at all. No.
And so three guys show up at the mansion and essentially tell the son, the son of the Russian oligarchs, that like they have to get it annulled. And he runs away, literally runs screaming out of the house. Right.
Yeah. Which is like one of the first funniest thing that happens. He just takes off running barefoot through the street.
Leaves her totally alone with these three guys that we as the audience know very little about, other than one of them's huge.
Yeah.
Like the guy who's Serbian, I think he is, or something like that.
Albanian, I think the other two were. Right. Yes. Yeah.
And then Igor, who looks like, like a I don't know. He looked like a football fan to me. Football meaning soccer.
Right.
You know what I mean?
What are they called? A tosser, a bruiser? What are they called?
I don't know.
Daniel Radcliffe was in a whole movie, or not, Elijah Wood was in a movie about like, whatever those football fans are called. Yes.
Yeah. Is that Football Factory? Is that the one he was in?
No, it's there's an Elijah Wood movie and it's called like, Hooligans. There's Hooligans. He looks like a football hooligan.
Right. Exactly. Yes. And so, so so the young Russian leaves his new wife alone with these men, and she's kind of fighting for the marriage, but clearly she's the only one fighting for the marriage because the husband just left her.
Right. Yeah. She's like, he's out getting help right now. Like, get out of my house. My husband will come back in any moment. And these guys are like, your husband's gone. Like he left you here.
Yeah. And what I was saying in the original review, this is like the first moment where me as an audience member, I assume this is going to go Pulp Fiction way. You know what I mean? Like things are going to go bad.
It's going to like get more intense and ratcheted up here. Yeah.
Right. And it does. But also, we learn so much about these three guys that are introduced to the story within the first 10 minutes of them being involved, because they clearly are not those guys. You know what I mean? No. As much as they like to look like those guys and kind of pretend to be those guys, when it comes down to actually executing like one of those guys, they don't have any real ability to do it.
No, like they don't want to hurt her.
Right.
And so much of them are so much of their tactics like, please stop, please. Like they're being polite with her,
right?
And she's just screaming at them, and they don't know what to do. You're right. In another movie, they would have like, and they do kind of tie her up, but again, it's comically, and they're sort of like, I don't know what else to do. I guess I'll tie her up.
Right, and they're tying her up because she, as a character, just doesn't take crap from anybody. She's
exactly.
Like, she's like a feral cat in that moment that's cornered. And there's nothing to do other than get, the crap scratched out of you while you get a talking to from this very New Jersey person who's just like, not New Jersey. Where's she from? Was it New Jersey? I don't remember.
Her accent felt New Jersey, but this movie took place a lot in Brooklyn, so I couldn't quite tell.
Yeah. Yeah. So she gives them an earful.
Maybe she's from Staten Island. I don't know. So,
and the whole time I keep waiting for it to go bad. And then after a while, you realize these guys aren't going to hurt her. You know what I mean?
like they don't want to hurt her. They don't. There's even a moment where you like it looks like Igor's going to assault her, and just because like how he's holding her, and even he like looks at the situation like, oh no, I said that's not what I'm doing here. So
he looks like, even when he's doing the cliched things, he looks like a deer in headlights the whole time. You know what I mean? Like he just doesn't.
Right.
This is not in his plan. This is not a part of his everyday. You know what I mean?
Because you get the impression he's like a buddy of one of the Albanians, and they're just like, "Oh, hey man, I need you. I see you should come along. You know, you're a big dude. You look intimidating. You know." And then he gets there, and he's like, "I don't know what to do with the situation. Like I thought I was just gonna stand here and look big."
Yeah, and she's not scared of any of them at all.
No, not at all.
Which is impressive because I would have been scared of three guys. You know, two of which look pretty capable, I would say.
Right. And she's tiny.
Yeah. For sure. So yeah, that's when the movie turns for me from kind of like this fairy tale to like not necessarily even a nightmare, just kind of like a one night only movie type of thing, where like for the next hour and a half, you're going to spend the majority of your time with these four people who are trying to navigate what exactly is happening. You know what I mean? And what the power dynamics are, and assumptions that all of them have made about each other over the course of the next hour and a half. They're all going to be dispelled in one way or another. One of my favorite moments, though, is with Igor when they go back into the popcorn shop, the candy shop.
Oh, yes.
And he turns on the bruiser for like a split, you know, for like a minute, basically.
Oh, when he just snatches a baseball bat out of the guy's hands and then
it starts breaking things. It's very threatening and doesn't really fit the idea of what we've come to believe Igor is, which is not that guy. Even though he looks like that guy, he kind of talks like that guy, he's not that guy. But then he turns it on. He can clearly act like that guy, even if he's not to his core that guy. And it makes you wonder if, like in that scene, he just kind of breaks stuff. Maybe he is that guy. Maybe he would really hit somebody with a bat. He just never hit her with a bat. I don't know.
It's hard to tell because like at this point in the movie, they've been driving all over like Coney Island, Brooklyn, trying to find Ivan, I think is the oligarch's son's name. And like they're going to all the clubs. No one's picking up. So eventually Andy's like, oh, our friends work at this candy shop.
Sure.
So let's go there. And of course, you know, at the candy shop, the friend's like, we don't know you. We're not going to tell you anything. And I think at that point, Igor's just like, I can't do this anymore. Like I need results. So I'm going to smash some things up. And
for sure. Yeah. And there's a bunch of moments like that where just what you assume is not so, but like in an interesting way or a completely normal way. I don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah, like the other assumption I made was I figured that like the dad would be the one who's kind of driving everything because you know like he's the oligarch, he's one in power, and then you quickly realize that all the conversations they're having are with the mom. And then when the parents do show up, like the mom's running the show. She's the first one off the plane. She's the one barking orders. And the dad's just kind of like hanging out in the background.
Right.
You know, he's just sort of like, whatever, I'm here for the ride.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the dad's kind of like, I don't want the kid to work with me either. She's the one that wants him to get into the family business.
Yeah. I think the dad's like, well, fine, whatever you do. But yeah. I love the scene where Annie is telling off the mom about like, you know, like, your son is irresponsible and blah, 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 blah. And like sort of like saying it how it is. And the dad's just laughing the whole time in the background.
Right.
Because you feel like he's like, yeah, you're completely right about all these people in this situation.
Right. Yeah. She's saying what everybody else already thinks, even if the mother, you know, hides it from herself and from everybody else. But
right. Yeah.
She's just being very, very truthful, I would say.
Yep.
And the fact that like the son, it doesn't really even affect him to be told like he's a screw up that will never amount to anything. You know what I mean? Like he just looks at his mom and it's like, protect me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or his mom says to him like, you're getting this marriage annulled. And he's like, well, I guess that's what's happening. Like Andy's the one who's still like, we don't have to do this. And Ivan's like, yeah, we do.
Right.
My mom said I had to.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Anything else before we get to the car scene?
I think we can set up the car scene by saying like throughout the rest of the movie, once the chase happens and they're running around, Igor has these little moments of sweetness and protection towards Annie. Like not so much as that I don't think it's a romantic thing. I think he just more kind of feels sorry for her and like realizes that no one's protecting her in this situation. So he's just doing little things throughout the entire second half of the movie, even though he's also the one who's kind of like was holding her at the beginning, and she clearly thinks he's just some like lughead.
Yeah, I think he is probably genuinely a nice guy who respects women.
Right.
Which is weird because he looks like a bruiser who is a hired, musclehead, basically. And so I think he does have a genuine attraction for her beyond just feeling sorry for her. I think he thinks she's pretty and wants to be in her good favor. I don't think he's like actively pursuing her or anything. He's just being nice to a pretty girl.
Right. Yeah. Like,
you know what I mean?
I don't think he's doing things for her with the expectation there'll be some reciprocity.
Right.
I think he's just more like, yeah, like this is a pretty girl who's way out of her element. And,
I'm not here to hurt her.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Even though she's telling me I'm here to hurt her, I'm not. You know what I mean? Like he's kind of constantly defending himself from her. Everything he does, she sees the worst in it. And it feels like that's very targeted towards him rather than the other two guys, probably because he's the one that wrestled her to the ground and held her down when they first met. You know what I mean? Like that was her first impression of him. And also, I bet he looks like a lot of guys in the strip club.
For sure. Yeah. Just kind of these meatheads who come in. Yeah.
Right. And I think the movie spends a lot of time not addressing the idea that Anora might have some trauma in her background that it's not really a part of the story of the movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then not till the end do you realize she's kind of taking it out on him the whole time. You know what I mean? Whatever this trauma is that we don't really get into, that's probably the result of having a job where you have to manipulate people. Like literally part of the job. Like I remember talking to salespeople that I used to know when I worked at the car dealership, right? I worked media, so I never had to sell anything like to a customer or anything. But I've had conversations with people who long got out of the car salesman game, and they said it takes a while to like deprogram your brain. Like it takes a few years to just be like,
I'm sure.
Like you get so used to trying to figure people out in the moment and like manipulate them without them feeling manipulated, that even when you're long past the job, it's like your reflex is just like immediate and you have to like intentionally tell yourself like just be normal. You know what I mean? Don't see don't see everybody as an opportunity to win them,
right?
For one reason or another. And I think she has a little bit of that in her. Yeah,
but I appreciate that this movie didn't there wasn't a scene where she breaks down. She's like, "Oh, Igor, you're like all the guys that come into the club." Like it never got schmaltzy and
sure.
Like you knew she had her own agency and we didn't need a background. Like I don't need to know why she worked there, why she lives with her sister, right. It's probably a combination of trauma and circumstance and lifestyle that all culminated to this is the person she is. Right. But we're going to start here. We're not going to try and dig into the past.
Yeah. Anyway, as you were saying, the movie moves you got all these characters moving along with it. Two of
Right.
them being Annie and Igor. And the movie ends. They get the marriage annulled. And now Igor is tasked to drive Annie back to her house. The fantasy of being married to a millionaire Russian oligarch is over. You
It's
know what
over,
I mean?
yes.
It,
Yeah.
That is a dead dream at this point. And she has not necessarily softened to him, but at least stopped insulting him constantly.
Right.
Because she's realized, I think, on some level, even before they come up to the house, that like he's harmless and he's not gonna, he had every opportunity multiple times to be a bad guy to her, and he never took it. So
They were alone often. Like he was kind of her babysitter throughout this whole
right.
saga, this whole night. Yeah.
Yep. Do you want to gently describe
Oh,
the car
so
scene?
I'm still trying to figure out. So like, please jump in.
Mhm.
Yeah. So they get to her house. They pull up. She's about to leave and say, "All right, well, thanks. Have a good life." And then he hands her the engagement ring from the wedding, right? Which is like the one thing she wanted the entire time. Like she like I want to keep the ring.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's for sentimental value at first, or for the actual value, because I'm sure it was they talk about like some expensive diamonds. So he hands her the ring. She kind of sees this as like I think she realizes, oh, he's been sweet to me this entire time, even though I've been, thinking he was this other person.
Mhm.
So she essentially in the car climbs on top of him. They start having sex. And then this is where it got a little, I wasn't sure, because it seemed like he was trying to kiss her, and it felt almost like he was holding her. And then she pulled away, and then she started crying. And like so much happened in like 5 seconds
Mhm.
of like, we're having sex. It seems now it's like assault, and now she's crying. And I was like, whoa, what happened here? Because a lot happened in like 10 seconds.
I mean, I have my theories. I've only seen
Yeah,
it
please.
once, but I have heard them talk about that scene, like the actors. And from my understanding, your perception of it is right, even though I didn't catch all of that in the moment.
Okay. Okay.
But that they're getting it on in the car. She's taking the lead for sure.
Right. Yes.
And the moment he tries to impose some element of control here,
Oh, yeah.
she fights it.
Yes.
Type of thing. And so there's some kind of trauma here with aggressive guys.
Right. Yep.
And also a little bit of like a like one of the rules of strip clubs, if you're a stripper, evidently, this is just one of the things I've learned in an interview, is that you don't kiss.
Well, I mean, yeah, like there's well, I assume there's no kissing. I also, my understanding is like the stripper is in control. Like they set
Right.
the boundaries. And we see that. We see her doing dances, and we see her say to a guy like, "Oh, please send your hands." Like it's very much, again, my understanding,
Mhm.
not from experience, is like in the strip club, the whoever is the dancer, they kind of set the rules, they set the boundaries,
Mhm.
and in this case, the guys, he's the one who's expected to follow that, and that gives a chance for the dancers to feel safe, knowing that like, hey, these are the boundaries, I can set them.
Sure.
And right, in this case, she was in control, and then he took control, as you said, and maybe that kind of sparked her like fight or flight reflex of like, oh wait, I'm not in control anymore of the situation.
Mhm.
Because even when she was with Ivan, like she was still kind of in control. Like she was kind of telling him like, oh, let's have sex this way, or let's do, like
Mhm.
he was kind of the party boy, and she was one who's more like, let's try this, so let's do that instead.
She could get her way with him pretty much whenever she wanted.
Right.
With
exactly.
Ivan.
Yeah.
I also think she doesn't like Igor in that way. I think she sees sex or her body as like an asset. And so I
Exactly,
think in that
yes.
moment, it started as a thank you, I would
Mhm.
say, in her own,
Yep.
non-traditional way.
And her, we could say, skewed view on sort of like reciprocity, and yeah.
Right. And then when he kind of makes it clear with the face pull in that he doesn't want just a thank you. You know what I
Right.
mean?
He wants
that
intimacy.
That I think there's a little bit of a freak out going on. But then she also likes him and knows like he's not really after what she's giving him in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he doesn't want her just for that type of thing. He wants to know her and kiss her, and you know what I mean? Like I think he can
have a little more intimacy and relationship.
Right. I think he can sense that she's just doing this because this is what she does.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not because she's actually into him type of thing. In a, sexually attracted kind of way. And so I think the reaction is realizing she's with a guy who actually likes her, which is probably not a normal thing. Like likes her for her and clearly had every opportunity to try things or beyond
take advantage.
Take advantage type of thing. He never has, probably never will. She's realizing that. And that is probably confusing to her. But I think there's probably boils down to just people are complicated. You know what I mean?
Right. Like if you think about it too, she just had a crazy 24 hours.
It's like a release.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like she had to kind of be on her game the entire time because even though nothing terrible happened to her, she didn't know that. She thought the same thing we thought. Oh, here's some big scary dudes. What's going to happen to me? And she's gone all over New York City. She gets flown to Vegas, and it's so like that was probably also her moment of like what just like to actually process everything she just went through for the last 24 hours.
Yeah, and like the moment is like she's thanking him and then it turns into like a physical fight for a moment. You know what I mean? Like she's fighting him off, and then once he even lets go, she continues to hit him, and that turns into him like forcing her to stop hitting him by just kind of bear hugging her.
Yes.
Type of thing. Or no, wait, he grabs her hands first.
I think he grabs her wrist.
Hugs her close type of thing. And then she just starts sobbing and seems comfortable being held down by him.
Right. She's not fighting at that point. Like she's just, she needs like a shoulder to cry on or feel some sort of comfort in it.
So it's like such a crazy range of emotions. And I think it's all just kind of unloading from not only the experience of the last 48 hours or even the last 2 or 3 weeks or however long, the movie takes place in, but I think it's just like a release of like lots of pent up stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That the movie just doesn't clue us into much until that moment when you realize, oh, this is a pretty confused person, I would say.
Right. Yes. And like she shows she's strong and we see her in control, but obviously that's a mask for something else that, the movie's not going to tell us about, but that's okay. Like, again, I appreciate Sean Baker treats his audience with intelligence and doesn't have to say everything that this character has gone through to get to this point.
Yep, for sure. But it was like, on top of them not spelling it out for us, why this means that, that type of thing. It felt so genuine.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like kind of disturbingly genuine, I would say. And that was interesting because there's not too many movies that can disturb me with their genuineness.
No. And then it cuts to credits.
Right.
It's like it's her crying on his shoulder on top of him in the car, and then directed by Sean Baker.
Right. Yeah. I want to know, like, there's a piece of me that while they're building up to that car scene, I was like, man, I really want them to get together. He's so nice to her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like she's mean to him, but he's clearly into her, but like will never force anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
And like the way she's been treated by the Russian oligarch's son, whatever his name is, Ivan, was just, she was arm candy. You know what I mean? She was a plaything, just another plaything, basically.
Yeah, she was a toy to him. Yeah.
Right. And clearly Igor sees her as more than that. but she's just so mean to him. But I think it's all defense mechanism, clearly.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, I really liked the ending. Not sure it beats the ending of Florida Project though. Florida Project was like visceral to me.
When they run into Disney.
Just the idea of like the movie changes. Florida Project changes on a dime right there at the end. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's a weird ending compared to the rest of the movie. The Anora's ending fits far more in the greater context of the movie it's in. But yeah, Florida Project and the idea of people who don't have money, who are never going to experience Disney in the way that that movie shows them experiencing it. I don't know. It was visceral in that movie as well, in a different way.
Yeah. It's a different kind of release in Florida Project when they get to actually be there. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Oh, the other thing that I thought was great is the scene in the cafe in the middle of the night with the booth next to them, all those young people with the older kind of
Toros
henchmen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just kind of like ranting at those young people about how they have it great and whatever. I forget exactly what.
Yeah, it was the whole like, oh, kids these days, no work ethic. Yeah. So I read that was one of the guerrilla shot scenes.
Okay.
Where like I don't think that table was actors.
Oh, just random people that happened to be in the restaurant they were shooting.
Yeah,
type of thing.
Yeah, because if you notice, it's sort of like a far away shot. Like you feel like the camera's kind of zoomed in. So I think the camera's kind of like maybe tucked in the booth somewhere, and they just told the actor like, "Hey, go in this restaurant and try and find this kid."
Sure, and just start talking to the.
Just start talking to the clients in the restaurant.
Sure.
Yeah. And again, I don't know if he was told to ad lib this thing or if that was part of the script to be like, oh, go, but it's a great moment where it doesn't have to do anything with like the plot, but you just feel like this guy's like, oh man, the kids these days, and
Sure.
Absolutely. It was a fun character moment from this older guy.
Definitely. Yeah, that and like when they parked way far away because he didn't want to like move the car. That was great.
When they went to Coney Island.
Yeah. There was just lots of little touches that like absolutely don't have to be there, but made me like all of these people. For some reason.
I was reading an interview with Sean Baker, and he was talking about like bringing the Annie character to life, and like they said that they had the hair, they had the makeup, and they're like, something was missing from Annie. And then Sean Baker found out that like young people, the youths, are putting like tinsel in their hair.
Okay. Yeah.
So right, because if you notice in the movie, like she has like these little strands of tinsel in it, and he was like all of a sudden that just like every time she moved, you could see like everything she was doing because like the tinsel would move with her head.
Sure.
And just like he said, for her, like for him, it just brought the character to life, and like that was the last little touch that Annie needed to be. That Mikey Madison needed to like become Andy, which I thought that's so interesting. Like such a little thing, but something I noticed right away. It's like, oh, her hair's got like a little shine to it or something.
Sure. Interesting. Yeah, I noticed that too. But it makes sense to me. Definitely differentiated her.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And it felt like a stripper thing to do, to be honest.
It kind of did. Like the tinsel and the nails. I was like, okay, yeah.
Right. You combine that with the attitude and the makeup style and all that. And it was like
right.
Very,
it's
very my mind of what if I had to draw what a stripper looks like in my mind, Mikey Madison fit it pretty well with her her look.
Pretty much captured
with her look for sure. Yeah. So all right. Anything else with Anora? Are we done?
No, I mean it's a great movie.
Yeah, I like it quite a bit.
People should see it. If again, we've talked about everything that's good that you gotta prepare yourself for. It's worth seeing.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.